Ladies and gentlemen, can everyone hear me? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sandile Mtiane. Esteemed guests, colleagues, and students, welcome. On behalf of the Interim Vice-Chancellor, Professor Themba Mosia, I'm delighted to welcome you all to the University of Pretoria. For this public lecture titled The Idea and Practice of a Feminist Foreign Policy in the context of the Slovenian Foreign Policy, to be delivered by Her Excellency Tanya Fayon, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign and European Affairs, Republic of Slovenia. It is an honor to see such a diverse and distinguished gathering here today. I extend a warm welcome to our esteemed guests, including Her Excellency, Deputy Prime Minister, His Excellency Saso Potlesnik, Ambassador of Slovenia to South Africa, and His Excellency Lubov Apravitova of Ukraine, the Ambassador of Ukraine to South Africa, and other ambassadors that are here with us this afternoon. I know we have the ambassador from Somalia, ambassador from Italy, Germany, Chile, Sri Lanka, Mauritius, and Austria. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to all students and faculty members who have joined us today and those that are online. Your participation is invaluable, and your contributions will enrich the discussions in this public lecture. Just to tell you a few things about the University of Pretoria. University of Pretoria is one of the top universities and one of the largest contact universities in South Africa. As a globally competitive institution rooted in Africa, we produce socially impactful research to find solutions for the world's most pressing issues. We have a high quality of teaching and learning in classrooms, online, or in communities. Just to give you a few examples about our standing, we rank top 1% of the universities globally in 10 fields of studies, including agricultural sciences, biology and chemistry, clinical medicine, economics and business, engineering, ecology, immunology, microbiology, plant and animal sciences, and social sciences, that is in alphabetical order. And in South Africa, we are the leading university in 4 subjects. That include theology and religious, amen to that, electrical and electronics engineering, mathematics, accounting, where we have consistently achieved 100% pass rates for professional accounting examination in South Africa, more than 3 years in a row, if I'm not mistaken. In pursuit of our transdisciplinary ambitions, we have created 4 additional transdisciplinary platforms for intra and cross-institutional collaborations and partnerships in South Africa, our continent Africa, and the world. We are proud of these 4 platforms. And those are Future Africa, where we are right now, Javet UP Art Center, Engineering 4.0, and Innovation Africa at UP. These platforms help to create critical mass for new knowledge generation, we have record of many firsts in terms of global partnership, which will address the questions you asked me earlier on outside before we entered here, which you will find on our university website. But suffice to say, we have research and teaching partnerships, collaborations, and networks with over 3,000 universities and 230 international institutions worldwide, which is partnerships across 70 countries, 6 continents, including Africa, Asia, Europe, Middle East, North America, Oceania, and South America. As part of international research, partnerships, and collaborations, the UP is open to collaborating with universities in Slovenia as well, and share knowledge that can help solve some of the wicked global challenges of our time. This is one of the reasons why our Future Africa platform was established. It is the physical space for collaborative knowledge, creation, and research that merges to solving complex challenges that Africa faces. Multidisciplinary teams from across UP, the continent, and our research partners globally undertake this research, and Future Africa provides a space where research teams can collaborate and develop networking and research leadership skills. And we are glad that this lecture is happening here, where we have also hosted global leaders, including Your Excellency, Deputy Prime Minister. Before I close, I must acknowledge the dedication and efforts of Professor Christopher Isike, Acting Head of Political Sciences Department, Ambassador His Excellency Saso Podlesnik, and the team that worked relentlessly over the last couple of days to organize this event, to make it a reality. Thank you all for being here and those that are online, and I look forward to an enlightening discussion about plausibility of a feminist foreign policy and how it is accommodated within the foreign policy discussions and praxis of the Republic of Slovenia. This is an important topic of discussion, considering the urgent need the world has now to rethink not only our global state system and institutions in the face of global uncertainty and conflict, but also to rethink the ontological and epistemological lens from which we see the world. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite Professor Isike to take the floor and introduce our speakers.
Thank you very much. I want to say welcome to all of you. Just a little joke to say that we seem to still be experiencing the immediate post-COVID era, so people are sparsely, seated in the room, just to lighten the mood a bit. But Interim Vice Chancellor of the University of Pretoria, ably represented by a member of the University Executive, Mr. Sandile Mtiani, the Chief Operating Officer of the University of Pretoria, Her Excellency Tanya, in South Africa, we call it Tanya, but it's probably Tanja, I'm not sure, but forgive me. Tanya is fine? All right, Tanya Fajon, Deputy? Fayon, oh, I see, Fayon. So it's Tanya Fayon, so it's the J must be Y. So Tanya Fayon, Deputy Prime Minister and Chief Minister of Foreign and European Affairs, the Ambassador of the Republic of Slovenia, His Excellency Saso Podesnik. I don't see the Ambassador of Ukraine here. No, but I do recognize that we have other ambassadors and high commissioners here. You've just been mentioned, so no point for me to repeat. But, distinguished guests, colleagues, and our dear students, ladies and gentlemen. Now, my name is Christopher Isike. I'm director of the African Center for the Study of the United States here at the University of Pretoria, and I'm also acting head of the Department of Political Sciences. I must tell you from the start that this is a Department of Political Sciences event, not an event of the African Center for the Study of the United States. It is my singular honor to welcome you to this public lecture organized by the department, like I've said, in collaboration with the Embassy of the Republic of Slovenia. Thank you for the opportunity, Ambassador. Now, this topic of a feminist foreign policy has been on our agenda in the department for some time as part of our efforts to decolonize and de-Europeanize international relations theory and praxis by interrogating the masculinist and racist ontological foundations of the current state system, which has its origin in the Westphalian Treaty of 1648 in Germany, right? And that became the framework for modern international relations as we know it. Indeed, it laid the foundation for the study and practice of international relations, which at the same time was dominated by, European men with implications for a masculinist and sometimes, if you like, I would say, a hawkish view of the world in largely realist terms. So this European origin of modern international relations raises questions about, one, the internationalness of international relations as a discipline and as a practice. But more importantly, in terms of how it relates to today, it raises questions about whose thoughts matter when we engage in international relations theories and debates. Whose cities and villages are sources of ideas, whose cultures are affirmed. Can the thoughts of women, not just women in Europe or America, women across the entire world, including women in Africa, can their thoughts and their feelings and their experiences and their views be factored into a form of feminist foreign policy? How do these play out within the foreign policy of a country like Slovenia? A very beautiful country, east of Europe, which has demonstrated significant agency in European and global politics. Now, that we'll be having this talk by a Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs and European Affairs of this very, geostrategic, if you look at the location of Slovenia, and beautiful mountain country. It is important because Slovenia, for your information, has just been elected to the United Nations Security Council as a non-permanent member for 2024 and 2025. Now, this provides a good opportunity to frontline issues that help us to rethink and reform the international system and its governance institutions, which many scholars, by the way, are now beginning to think are no longer fit for purpose. So Slovenia, I can assure you, has traditionally advocated for strengthening effective rules-based multilateralism within the United Nations at its core, from my reading of its priorities that were publicly stated at the just concluded 78th UN General Assembly in New York. I can tell you that Slovenia is committed to a more efficient UN system that has respect for progressive international development law, international peace and security, and human rights with a focus on gender equality. Now, before I become a speaker myself, it is my singular honor to introduce to you our guest speaker. Our guest speaker, Her Excellency Tanya Fayon, is a Deputy Prime Minister and doubles as Minister of Foreign Affairs and European Affairs of the Republic of Slovenia. She holds a degree in journalism and has postgraduate certificates in international politics and management. She's worked as a journalist, and maybe this will show when she starts talking, at Radio Glass Ljubljana, if I pronounce that correctly, and at the Republika newspaper, and from 1995 at RTV in Slovenia. For 8 years, she was correspondent for RTV Slovenia in Brussels, where she closely followed Slovenia's ascension to the European Union. And then those are the first years of the EU membership of Slovenia. She was first elected to the European Parliament in 2009 in the platform of the Social Democrats, and again in 2014 and 2019. That's why I said she's been very active in terms of European politics at the international level. Now, during her parliamentary term, she was constantly active in Committee on Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs, and the Committee on Foreign Affairs. So she's well qualified, to give a talk on this subject, which is, I understand, very close to her heart. She has made a name for herself in the Western Balkans, where, among others, she played a key role as the European Parliament's rapporteur on visa liberalization for the countries of the region, and as an advocate for respect for democracy, the rule of law, human rights, and equality. It is no wonder that we have her as a guest speaker for such an important subject. Now, I must tell you that she was also one of the most active members of Parliament, European Parliament, on asylum and migrant policy and the reform of the Schengen legislation. I'm sure that in Africa, we may have a thing or two to learn from her in terms of how to manage immigration within the continent. She has also been actively involved in transatlantic relations, campaigning for respect for human rights and the protection of personal data, environment, and workers' rights and protection. These are issues that are close to our heart, but they're also issues that the Slovenian Republic is firmly committed to at the international forum. Now, during her second parliamentary term, she served as vice chair of the Group of Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats in European Parliament, and was the only Slovenian ever to be named twice among the 40 most influential members of European Parliament by the influential magazine Politico. In 2020, she was elected president of Social Democrats at the Social Democrats Congress then. Tanya Fayon speaks a number of foreign languages and has an excellent knowledge of the international environment, as you can tell from the introduction that I've just given of her. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, please help me make welcome Her Excellency, the Deputy Prime Minister of Slovenia, who also doubles as Foreign Affairs Minister of that beautiful country.
Thank you very much. I decided to leave my notes there, and I will, as you challenged me, try to speak out of my heart, being or used to be a journalist. But first, dear professors, dear students, your excellencies, everyone that is today here, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great privilege to be not only the first time today in South Africa, but the first time at this beautiful university, as I understood. It started many, many years ago in an old house with around 30 students, and it grew throughout the years to one of the biggest universities around the globe. And I'm sure that the wisdom of your former president, Nelson Mandela, the education is the most powerful tool, still has a lot of meaning. It's a big inspiration to me, the development, what this country went through, from what you were describing and what we all know, from apartheid to democracy. It's an inspiration to me, from the years of embargo to having the biggest almost influence in the world politics. So once again, thank you for inviting me. It's difficult to speak after such a long introduction that tells a lot about you, but I would maybe first just give a few feeling how I'm coming from a very small country, but a country with a history that is quite significant. Slovenia used to be a part of former Yugoslavia. And maybe you might recall that at that times with Tito, we were part of non-aligned, and we were quite, working a lot and being very good partners to the countries in Africa. And I had a privilege as a Minister of Foreign Affairs for the last year to travel a lot around the globe, and to meet a lot of partners, especially during the year that I was trying to convince our partners that Slovenia has a consistent policy, that we are committed to international cooperation, multilateralism, as you said, human rights, rule of law, democracy. And I'm really proud that in a year of not having a strong diplomatic network, but having this credibility that we don't have a heavy past, not having any heavy burdens from the past, but that we really work hard, we managed to get a really big approval of our foreign policy during the vote back in June this year to become a non-permanent member of the Security Council for the next 2 years. And that is what I would, despite the topic that we come and it's talking about empowerment, awareness of women, girls, equalities. At the later stage, I'm very glad I have the chance to speak about that, but say that I'm very much aware that now when we are entering to Security Council and we just became an observer on the 1st of October, that there is a huge challenge ahead of us all. The world is quite in challenges, deeply polarized in a way, with currently 55 armed conflicts around the world, with poverty, with climate change, extreme weather conditions, terrorist threats, energy, food insecurity, and name it. So also the multilateralism and the world order is in a way at stake, and the Security Council doesn't function the way we used to see it. So we need strong partnership with Africa, I'm very much aware with that, and we need also to reform, to adapt it to the current circumstances, to be much more up-to-date how to tackle challenges of today. So my history goes back to when I was a young journalist, and I had a chance to go, being 20, to Brussels. At that time, almost no one knew Slovenia. There were a lot of taboos. Former Yugoslavia went through bloody wars. Slovenia was often changed with Slovakia. We had taboos, and sometimes was strange to really fight for who you are, even though you might not understand, because the Europe today is still, I would say, a continent with peace and stability and quite high standards and values. But I was proud to follow the process of my country last 8 years before the accession to the EU and first 4 years inside the EU, when our values really changed a lot. I entered the Slovenian politics as one of rare female leaders, because even though we say we have equalities and we don't speak about empowerness or awareness of, how to empower women and girls, because we have equalities everywhere in our documents, we still don't have many women in leading positions, nor in political life, nor in business life. And in fact, I had to struggle quite a lot. That's why I said I will speak a little bit also out of my heart, and maybe you will get some inspiration for put some questions. I had to fight also against the men, because it was on elections, always the men were those that were being the first runners on the list for the elections. So luckily we established a system of preferential votes, and I managed twice to throw out the men from the first place and be elected with preferential votes. That put me in the position also to become a party leader of the currently governmental party, which is the second strongest. That is why I'm also the vice prime minister and still the leader of the party. But we still don't have as many leaders as I wish to see. We still cannot speak about the parity on the leading positions in a political life, nor in business life. So we are still struggling in a discussions how to have equalities and how to make this what I believe is essence of our democracy and the values, that we can all contribute, women and men, equally to the progress of our countries. So when I took over the ministry, I first said I have to be a leader with a good example. So I have to do better with foreign policy strategy. And I looked inside the ministry and I realized that we have fantastic educated ambassadors, diplomats, but only 1/3 of them are really ambassadors abroad. The others are back at home. Even though they have all possibilities, if you look at the education and so, but the family conditions and other things didn't allow them to be equally represented abroad. And it is still the case, but in the last year we improved. And that's why I decided, and I'm coming to the topic, but you feel free to ask anything. As I'm a foreign minister, I follow the globe. But I developed a concept of, not that developed is nothing new, but I decided to write a draft paper on a feminist foreign policy. In fact, the feminist foreign policy caused some provocation in a public debate, even though it is, as a concept, nothing new. But it provoked a debate even inside my teams and the ministry, but also in a society. Why do we need to speak again about the feminism? We have all the rights, we are equal, etc. But in fact, when you look around, even though in my country or in Europe, we have a lot of rights that are granted, but if you look a little bit around, there is quite a deterioration of women's rights, of girl rights, and we have to do so much more together to empower, to give chances to girls, to the education, to the living conditions, and to make them equal. This is a concept with feminism that started in Sweden, and a lot of ministers are nowadays again reviving it. And when I decided to revive the whole foreign policy strategy, because the world is rapidly changing, I also decided to make a very strong pillar to send a message that we want to do more outside, and we want to put all aspects of the equalities, awareness, and empowerment of women and girls in all aspects of our foreign policy. What was very inspiring to me when I was actually the first female foreign minister of my country, that's also gave me certain responsibility. We also got the first female president of Republic Slovenia, and also the first speaker of the national parliament. So currently, we are in a leading positions in my country, 3 female leaders, which is something that is also for us new. And that is why we are the front runners also to work and work hard. So when I am with my president of Republic of Slovenia, Nataša Pirc-Musar, that is the first president lady, going around, we are really working a lot with discussing with different NGOs, with women organizations, be it everywhere, how and what we can do more together. And female leaders established a very nice online platform. We have connections from the ministers, female, from all around the globe, and we are growing. It's still a very small number, but we are growing. And I can tell you, once we are meeting, and we are meeting quite regularly, later was in New York some 2 weeks ago, we were about 35 maybe female foreign ministers. It is an amazing bond that unites us when we are discussing the topics that are there always, but not high on the agenda. And we are together sending messages out lately on the violation of girls' and women's rights in Afghanistan, in Iran. We are exchanging our thoughts, what to do better, how to empower girls, women, how to make parity. I give you one example. The General Assembly, 78 years, 78 leaders. How many female leaders out of 78? Someone could guess? 4. So this gives you an example. If we want to be an institution worldwide, the strongest one, that is putting the global order and rules with a leadership that is having far away from parity, we have a lot to do. So I'm happy to work, and I'm not a professor or a scientist or a researcher, But from my personal experience, I can tell you with the social media today, with the disinformation, with online platform, women leaders are even in a more difficult position. There is quite a lot of growing sexism, chauvinism, also on social media, online, and you have to, with the comments that male colleagues don't hear often, but you have to be strong. And that is why we try to unite, that is why we write papers, that is why we work together, and you realize how many aspects we have to cover. It's not only about wars and violence, what is happening, that women can be very quickly victims, girls can be very quickly victims, not only of wars and conflicts, but simply of poverty, simply of having no chance for education or normal living conditions. In economic crisis, they are first victims, so there are a lot of challenges. And even in our societies that we have strong democracies, I can tell that even we face the deterioration of certain women's rights. Not long ago, we had in my country clash of those girls that are fighting for the right of abortion, even though we have it in the constitution, or against it, or the right of women of their own bodies. So there are a lot of topics we are discussing, and maybe at that point I would just shift to not exclusively feminist foreign policies, but I would just say this is basically the fundamental right. It's basically the human right, that everyone can really have the right to life in dignity, safe life, and a life in which you can work, get a salary for that, have a chance of education. And this is, I think, the world where we have to build on and work together. For that reason, I'm really proud of my country that we will now, for the second time in history, sit in the Security Council, because I know how big responsibility we are taking over. But being small and ambitious, I'm sure we can build quite good bridges of trust and confidence. As I said before, we can be strong on soft things. We have a beautiful country, as you said. We have a lot of forests, we have mountains, we have a clean water, clean air. Traditionally, we love sports. We have famous sport people around. We are proud being small, but we can be really someone who is humble and willing to embrace. And this is also my motto of work in international sphere. Let's listen to each other, let's hear each other and understand each other. And let's be humble and embrace what is good in us. And I believe that as women and as men together, equal, we can really do the world better. And maybe here I stop. I rather hear your questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We've heard the Deputy Prime Minister. She reiterated the fact that the world is facing a lot of challenges. Democracy, human rights are receding in many respects. She talked about the challenges that women continue to face, which in itself raises questions around whether we can revisit the debate between critical mass and critical acts. When you look at a country like South Africa, for example, we have about 46% of women in parliament, but yet we are one of the rape capitals of the world. So why is the presence of women in parliament not translating to a better deal for ordinary women out there? Why do they continue to face such dangers from men in society, right? Is it really a question of more women in parliament, or about critical acts of a few women and a few men? She mentioned that amongst the 78 presidents that are part of the 178, the part of the UN General Assembly, only 4 are women leaders. But she also talked about a small country like Slovenia that is punching above its weight considering its size. Just 2.5 million people in Slovenia, 2 million, not even 2.5, 2 million people, but it's punching above its weight. Its second time is going to be in the UN General Assembly. It's pushing issues of gender equality, it's pushing issues of human rights. A small country of 2 million people is going to be on the UN Security Council twice in 10 years. Is it a function of really numbers, or is it a function of quality of actors, right? So that's a question that I think that we can think about. Another question would be, would women, there are studies that show that women are the fairer sex in terms of corruption, that women are less corrupt than men. It doesn't mean that there are no corrupt women. The studies also show that women are not warmongers because they are more communitarian, more empathetic than men. Some people have said that this amounts to essentializing women, but these records show that they are more empathetic to community needs for whatever reasons than men. So how will all of these change the tenor and color of politics? If we have more women as heads of states, are we going to see a less conflictual world? Are we going to see more cooperation between different countries of the world because women are the helm of affairs running the world? What does a feminist foreign policy look like in substance? So my students are not here, many of them are in class, and they asked me to ask the Deputy Prime Minister these two questions around the quality that women represent in politics and whether, their presence, more of them in politics at the helm of affairs would actually make any tangible difference in terms of how we see the world and how we do the world. Maybe you want to start with that. Now, I've asked these questions first because I'm trying to buy you time. Because you were so enthralled and enchanted by the Deputy Prime Minister, you were not really listening to what she was saying. So I've put out these questions. By the time she finished answering, from what she said earlier and her answers, you would have questions, true or false? Yeah, I see true. So it means that when she answers, I'm coming back to you to ask if you have any questions. There are roving mics, 2 of them. Please feel free. The Deputy Minister said that she wants to be able to interact and engage. And this is not typically what government officials do. They just want to talk and disappear. But this Deputy Prime Minister wants to talk. Maybe that's one of the elements, one of the colorations of feminist politics. Maybe, I'm not saying that, I'm not saying anything, right? Also remember that this is an academic environment. It means that there's academic freedom. It means that you're free to say anything you want to say, and you will not be arrested. This is South Africa. All right, so you want to talk to those 2 questions? All right.
Thank you very much. First, just to male guests, don't be afraid, because we equally need you. Even though the topic is sometimes, I admire your courage that you have this topic for the students, the courage as I had the courage, because I said it's often a topic that is not really the main topic on the agenda, but it's extremely important. There are some statistics, or I will give you 2 examples. When it comes to women in conflict negotiations, we don't have enough women when it comes to negotiations, how to resolve conflicts, wars, tensions, violence. And it's proven that women are very good, maybe because of an emotional side. So we are currently working hard to bring more women around the world to be represented in conflict negotiations. And statistics or empirical data really proves that they are very successful, but we don't have them. So there is one struggle we have. And there is one article I remember, maybe you have seen it, during the COVID, during the COVID, that we were all affected, that the countries with women leadership presidents at that time, and they were pointed out, I don't know if you saw it, it's maybe too easy to say, but the results, how they dealt with the COVID, were better ones. I remember at that time I was following Jacinda, the Prime Minister, that gave me quite inspiration during the COVID, as she was all days tweeting, being on social media as just one of everyone, being very normal and trying not to scare or frighten people, but trying to approach them how to best deal with a deadly disease. And was very human and very empathetic, and she showed in a very strong leadership. I don't say this is necessarily the rule. As you said, women can be also corrupted, and there are no rules on that. But I just want to emphasize all over again, we need women in leading positions, be it in political life or business life, or we need to have equalities, and we need to empower women and girls when that is necessary. So maybe this would be my 2 answers, but happy to say more.
All right. Are you ready now with your questions? By the way, did you know that the countries that managed COVID better in 2020, in terms of deaths per million, in terms of delivery of public health services to citizens, were all run by women? Did you guys know that? Compared to the countries led by men, big countries, powerful countries. We're talking about New Zealand, we're talking about Germany, South Korea at the time. These are countries that were led by women. It was also, if I remember correctly, Denmark, right? They were more empathetic, more understanding of what people needed, what the state and what government is supposed to be about in the lives of people. They were more people-oriented, and that's what government really is supposed to be about. Maybe these are examples of what a woman-led country can be like in terms of real and meaningful issues that affect people's everyday lives. But does it mean that it will always be the case? Questions? Any question? Yes, sir? 2, 3, 4, 5. Wow, you guys shocked me. Okay, 6. So I would start with the first 2 on this row, and then we'll go to each row. Yeah.
Good evening to everyone. I'm Suminda Mendis from the Sri Lanka High Commission, Councillor. Thank you for the opportunity. And my question, I'll make a foundation. Sri Lanka is the first country produced that world first female prime minister in 1961, if I'm not mistaken. It will impress the ma'am, and for her research, I think it would be good insight. And her daughter also became the president of Sri Lanka in 1994. But today, even I'm not happy, we are doing a great campaign to increase the number of parliaments in the parliament for the women's, but it's less than 5%. I would say it's only 1%. It's not because of the academia or not because of the politicians or not because of the policymakers. They're aware of the common people. They are quite reluctant to vote when it's come to the voting. So that's just something on the women feminism. And when it's come to the international relations, so we are talking about how that female or male getting into the politics, getting into the international relations. So my question is focused on Indo-Pacific as the quite impressive kind of foreign policy level talking going on. Even in the Europe, I know that Slovenia is quite far away from the Indo-Pacific, but European Union talk about the Indo-Pacific. So US or COD talk about the Indo-Pacific. So whether it's, do you have any idea of how that Indo-Pacific kind of new foreign policy trend it's aligned with the feminism or your program or your thoughts or your agenda? Thank you.
Did you get? Yeah, okay, all right. Next.
Good afternoon. My name is Juanita Ibañez. I work for the Embassy of Chile. Okay, feminism, the word per se has been demonized, right? So when we talk about a feminist foreign policy, the first thing that you think about is how bad feminism has affected the country at large, I mean the world at large. My question specifically is, like Professor, you said, even the percentage of women in parliament here is very high, but it does not show in the actual society or the policies that we implement. How do you rally women within power that might not stand for the actual feminist or rights for women? As in, you can be a woman but not be for specific rights because they contradict traditional values, for example. So how do you rally up women in the public sector, in politics, etc., to actually carry on and implement policies such as this one?
Thank you. You want to take one more? Okay. On the second row, is there any question here? Okay. Third row. Fourth.
Good afternoon, Madam Deputy Prime Minister. I'm from Jamaica, Jamaican High Commissioner. And as you will know, we do have a female foreign minister. You would have met her 2 weeks ago in New York. In terms of our foreign policy, it's not necessarily labeled as a feminist foreign policy. However, over the years, because of progressive policies that we have had within Jamaica, we have more women in leadership and in key roles. As I said, first female prime minister in 2006 and a first foreign minister. I would like to know what deliberate policies you have put in place to ensure that you have had more women at the helm. Because, as you know, the foreign ministry or the world of diplomacy has traditionally been a male-dominated one. How have you been able to redress that or balance it? As I said, in the case of Jamaica, it has just evolved because we have had more women in leadership positions. But what have you done to have a deliberate Slovenian feminist foreign policy? Thank you.
Okay, let's just have, okay, so there are 3 questions. I think you should take these 3, and then we'll take the next 3 to be Melissa, you, and then come to you. Maybe you don't even need to come here. Can we just give her a mic so she can sit there? Yeah?
So I go with this?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll do my best. They're not very easy questions, but we'll try to reflect first. You were saying that you regret you have only 1% of, which is really, no one can be happy about it. But we have a system of quotas. One can always say, yes, we do still need it. And if we wouldn't have quotas, when I was still a European parliamentarian, most likely we wouldn't have 1/3 or even more women in the European Parliament. But the quotas pushed political parties to put women, not on a top position, but at least in the first half. In Slovenia, we have 40%. We would like to progressively push it to parity. But we have a struggle, and I can also say it as a party leader, that it's not easy to get women to be exposed as a politician or run for the elections, because it became pretty dirty environment. That's what I wanted to indicate before. For different reasons, at least in my society or in other countries too, with the social media, with everyone can say everything, became quite discredited. So also political parties are losing a lot of credibilities. So becoming today a politician, it's maybe more difficult than 10 years ago, because you're quickly discredited, social media kills you. As a woman, you're even more exposed. They judge your outfit, they judge your hairstyle, they judge your name it. You don't see these comments for men. So women prefer to stay in the back. So you have to push hard and create the environment for that. And that is why often women here, if we are more of us, feel stronger. But it's not easy. I sometimes feel nowadays still so angry with my male colleagues, because what I feel is that they can go out, sit in the pub, find solutions in few hours, but we don't belong in that circle. So we still have some taboos we have to break. Step by step. But I think we did quite significant changes. Still we have quotas, still we have to put, requirements, and still we struggle to get women to put on electoral lists. For Indo-Pacific, honestly, I think everyone has to struggle if you look to how to ensure that women are there. I just know that currently really the international focus is really shifting to Indo-Pacific. It's becoming extremely important, and the whole world, all countries are in a way positioning and looking to the development in the Pacific. I very much agree what you said from Jamaica, that it's not necessarily labeled feminist foreign policy. I agree. I was thinking myself whether what and how to approach it. You can do it in many ways. The important is that you do it. But feminist foreign policy was developed by Swedish many years ago, and nowadays it's again an idea that is coming back. So many countries, and even our male colleagues, are really approaching, so the group is growing. But even though it's labeled different, what I really try to do, and it's again very hard, I try in the leading positions inside the ministry, because I have to make an example, put all leading positions on parity. That means out of 6 directors, 3 female directors. Put ambassadors to the level of parity. Whenever is in a circle, try to look you have equal number of ambassadors. 2 deputy ministers, or the leading positions, parity. And I have difficulties because quite often I hear it's not about the gender, it's about the quality, and I perfectly agree. And then it's sometimes really difficult. Just recently I was appointing a new deputy foreign minister, and I really was so stubborn that I have to have a woman if I want to keep the parity. And I really had to struggle. But this is how it goes, and maybe slowly, step by step, I will change it. Now when we will adopt in the government, in the parliament, also the feminist strategy, I plan, we have in December the meeting with all the ambassadors, I plan to give them instructions, tell me what will you do on the basis of the strategy paper in the countries where you present Republic of Slovenia. And I do expect that you will follow, but introduce me how you will do it. So pushing them in the direction to be aware and to do more. So on quota, on diplomacy, yes, that I think I answered. Yeah, it's male-dominated, I don't know. Yeah, but the way I explained it, I think just step by step. For that, maybe Jamaica will also be a good example, as you said. So I'm grateful, and we had a very nice talk with the minister.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We understand the challenges that women face, and they're quite enormous. I know a story of cabinet ministers sitting, and then when it was lunchtime, all the men in the room looked to the 2 women to get up and to serve them tea, even though they are all colleague ministers. So it's a product of socialization, really, in terms of society, age-long socialization, and it makes us to think carefully about, aspersions on feminism, it is also a product of our inability to understand that if we go into our histories in Africa, for example, before colonialism, women were involved in public life. They had agency in the economy. Colonialism came and destroyed all of those gender relations dynamics. So today, many African men see feminism, see women and human rights as a Western imposition. But if we dig deep and do research, the research will show that African societies, in fact, feminism, gender parity or gender equity, maybe not equality, gender equity, is African, because gender relations between men and women was fairer, regarded women better before the European patriarchies that were introduced in the continent. So maybe one of the things we need to do is research into our cultures to show that women have never been relegated. They may have not had equal power with men in societies, but they had more agency than the kind of bland representation that we are seeing through affirmative action today. So let me go to Melissa, and then it will be you and Melissa there.
Good afternoon, Madam Excellency. Thank you so much for your presentation and the discussion that you've opened for all of us. I think my question has sort of been asked, but I just wanted maybe a little bit more clarity on how to achieve or reach substantive parity, for example, in Slovenia and also just like globally. Your beginning of your presentation, you did say that in terms of like the documentation, it is there, but substantially in terms of like actually seeing the work on the ground, how can we actually achieve true parity? Thank you.
Tell us your name and then your question.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof. My name is Yoloka Zimfuto. I work for the Center for Human Rights at the Pan-African Parliament as a civil society liaison officer. Thank you so much, Prime Minister, and I'm very grateful to be in this space, knowing that South Africa also has a foreign policy, international relations minister who's equally powerful, and it's good to see women in these positions, because definitely for us to see that things can be done, we must see people doing them. So thank you so much and for holding this space. My question, I want to foreground it by actually alluding that yes, feminism is not only a women phenomenon or concept that you only want to empower women, but now the disposition is that historically and the current system favors the men, then the best thing to do is actually to empower women to actually get the parity. Now, feminism in terms of the foreign policy space, and now in a space where multilateral approach is very much threatened, right? And the society is becoming, again, more polarized. We've seen the developments in the various poles of the country, of the world, where we're seeing that the discourse that the United Nations has been standing for many years is actually being rescinded. Knowing that Slovenia is joining the UN Security Council next year in January, and the current discourse on the table is that the United Nations Security Council should perhaps be reformed because it's not necessarily favorable for the majority of the countries and states in the United Nations. In the spirit of feminism, which borders on power dynamics, do you think that, or maybe your position from Slovenia, should the United Nations Security Council be reformed to ensure that the power dynamics that exist now are kind of eradicated so that everyone is on equal footing? Because the issue of vetoing, the utilization of veto rights when a state is not feeling like the topic is suitable for them or tickles their fancy is kind of flawed. So what is your country's position? Maybe you can chip in your personal position on the issue of veto rights on a feminist approach. Thank you so much.
Okay, you can pass the mic to him behind you, and then we'll bring it to the to the next row here. So she's just talked about feminism representing inclusivity. So in the spirit of that inclusivity, can we expand this UN Security Council and reduce the veto power of just a few countries? That's essentially the crux of the question. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you very much, Prof. Your Excellency, or it's David Ngubuka, I think State SA IO, I think it's Information Office. So yeah, we also curious about the shifting global politics of the global South. We see the transformation of the BRICS. The fighters have called 911. Now it's 11 countries altogether. I think it's only one lady or female president from Ethiopia, if I'm not mistaken. So we also wanted to understand, because we know the other countries that are also involved in that opening the can of the possibility of opening the can of cannons, or the possibility of opening the can of nuclear. We would like to understand or advise, can advise women, how can they be also included or in the space of economic inclusivity, whilst the other country, which is going to be United Arab Emirates, if they're going to agree to open that cannon, which United Arab Emirates will be wearing the cap of COP28. So we also like to advise them during that meeting with the ambassadors or the COP28, also to consider and consolidate the women's struggle with the climate change impact. Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, it's also about inclusivity. Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Your Excellency. And I'm not a political science person. I'm an academic in animal sciences. I'm an agriculturist. So my point comes from what you said earlier about abortion. And I want to relate that to what the professor said in his last statement. I may not be aware of how women played, were valued by men in Africa. I'm not aware of that time. I'm living in a time where women are thrashed upon. Women are the sole providers in their families. They even provide for the men that impregnate them with many children. Besides providing for the households, they have to provide for the same males. All over Africa, that is the state of affairs. You go on our streets in South Africa, we find women on our corners with young kids begging. And every time I see them, in my mind, I'm like, there's probably a man behind this evil that is going to collect, that drops these women on all these corners, that is going to collect the monies from these women. And they're sitting there with kids in this heat, whether it's raining, whether it's cold, they just sit there. How, I know we already have a fight globally on women's rights to abortion, but how do we elevate the fight to make contraceptives? For instance, in South Africa, contraceptives are free at all clinics. But I always ask myself, why is it that women do not visit these clinics and get the contraceptives for free from young girls? We have high pregnancy rates in South Africa, teenagers. You said you hope that we have carried the spirit of Mandela, where he promoted education. It is promoted from a constitutional point of view. It is promoted from the speeches that our leaders make. But on the ground, it is not there. on the ground, we do not have young girls that are growing up to make it to university, to make it out of university and have prospective jobs to provide for their families. My question, I think, is to say, how do we make women health or female health a priority from a girl child and prioritize their prosperity without leaving behind their boy child? Because what I've seen is that as women go into positions, I'm glad that you're working together in Slovenia, but what we've seen in South Africa is that there is no sisterhood. We've had apartheid, and during that time, white women were also marginalized. So when patriarchy shifted in South Africa, white females got some opportunities. But when a black female came with democracy, they see that as a threat. Why is it that as females, we cannot work together for the good of all females and for the good of all society and just for social justice for everybody? I think, how do you achieve that? I think the professor said there's a high number of women in our parliament, but we don't see the results on the ground. Yeah. Thank you.
I really struggled with my patience to keep you talking because you are from agric science. I don't want political scientists and international relations people to monopolize the discussion, but this is not going to be an excuse for anyone else to talk that long because we are running out of time. But thank you very much for those important interventions. I think I've got an answer that I will give to you, but I'll allow the Deputy Prime Minister to answer these questions. Do you have a question? The mic man has a question? Okay, all right. Deputy Prime Minister, please. Yes, you can.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Daniel Ekumse from the Department of Political Sciences here at the University of Pretoria. 2 questions, Your Excellency. The first one, the international system is characterized by nation states who are pursuing their interests, both at the national level and at the regional level. What does a feminist foreign policy promise us in terms of reducing the tensions of self and national interests at the international level? Number 2, and this speaks particularly to Africa, what opportunities exist for African nation states when they seek to pursue a feminist foreign policy, when they exist in an international system that is strangling their survival? How do they really cope with the global north that is strangling the survival of African nation states, which in that context, you sometimes need some level of aggression to assert your agency? Because there is not just about empathy, or it's not just about being subtle and kind and generous, it's about the survival of the people. What does a foreign feminist policy offer Africa? Thank you so much.
Okay. Madam.
Okay, thank you. Now, I am not sure I put down some 10 questions. At everyone I was already thinking what to answer, but it was a new one. I'll do my best and apologize in advance if I will not completely manage everything. But maybe start from your last question. Because if you look to countries where you have no access to water, and the girls have no access to education, but they have to survive their families, and they have per day walk maybe hours to come to water resource and bring water back to the families, that they can live, and this is, you know, lack of possibilities to education, and this means awareness. So how to empower girls to have chance to get into education system from being very small, to empower them, and this is extremely important. If you dig the data or statistics, you will see that in the countries or in the societies where there is, in a way, parity in all spheres, I don't speak about political or business life exclusively, but where women work, when women can have decent living conditions together, being mothers and having families, the societies have better GDP per capita, the better development. This is statistically proven. So maybe I don't speak now out of my head, but in my country, and this is very good, I very much appreciate your point of view because it's so good to listen to each other and we are coming from different parts of the world. In my country, it's the opposite phenomena. We are fast eldering. So our population is getting old because families don't decide to have many children anymore. They have maybe one or maximum two, or many families even no. Last time I heard in South Korea that they don't have even 0.5 child per family because it became too expensive to guarantee the future and education. And in Europe, we are very growing society, in a way, aging society. So you have to see, you know, what is, you have, of course, as a parent or as a family, have condition to sustain your child, to give the best what you can, and this means education, at the first. You mentioned some points that for our society are also part of fundamental rights, the right to the abortion, the right that the woman can herself decide about her body. These were long-lasting struggles. Recently we had a campaign about that the rape is a crime with the slogan only yes is yes. So a lot of things are in the society happening, how to improve conditions for women, how to make them, you know, equal and give them opportunities to work. Even as mothers, we have a very long maternity leave, so they can, in a decent conditions, stay home as mothers for several months and then go back at work. And even there we are flexible with kindergartens and try to create conditions that they can be creative and working. So back at my country, women are equally working than men. I would say the challenge is when it comes to economic crisis, they first lose their jobs and they are more vulnerable and more dependent. So there are a lot of things, I don't know what and how to address everything you were mentioning, but some maybe out of the topic that was mentioned, reform, veto, and some geopolitical questions. I will just address on the Security Council and Africa, because I see that in Security Council we have around 90% or 80% agenda on Africa without Africa. That urgently calls to the reform, not only for that reason, but we have to adapt to the new situation and enlarge, but also include Africa at the table. And this reform process is ongoing for many years, including of the question of veto and how to adapt it and make the whole multilateral system more efficient and up to date. So this will be not an easy discussion, especially not in the situation when you have, in a way, paralysis on many topics in the Security Council. We have our positions. The currently reform is somewhere in the back of our minds, but we are open to suggestions and ideas how to improve the work. But I am a strong advocate that we have to enlarge Security Council in terms to include also African states. On geopolitics, global south, transformation of the BRICS, I would just mention that I, in the last year, often heard the criticism, and I'm aware of it, especially from the global south, that there became some dangerous partners around the globe with like-minded, based values, governments and systems that we will protect also the world order, especially from the perspective as my country that we are not a military power, we were never colonial power, but we want, you know, to be struggling for fundamental rights and the rule of law and democracy. Thank you.
Right. We still have time for some questions. Ambassador? one more round? Okay, one or two more questions. I want to, no, not from him, on this side. So we've had a lot of questions from this side, and I'm giving you on this side a chance to ask one or two questions, but to try and just give some answers to the question you asked about why we have, you know, why women can have a better deal in South Africa. For me, we've done research on this, and the conclusion is that you can't legislate gender inequality. You can't legislate it out, right? You can't make laws and simply expect that laws can change the gender dynamics between people in a community, in privacy of their rooms. What can make that change, and this is one area that there's not been a lot of policy, is the question of the ideation, the thinking that drives gender-based violence. And it comes down to what men think about women, right? How do men see women? If men see women as sex objects only, or these people that are only in the bedroom, that cannot think, that cannot do anything, if that's the perception you have of women, then it will inform how you treat women. Because how you see, according to social psychologists, determines how you do, how you behave. So if I see her as a human being with intellect, I would engage with her and treat her as an equal. But if I see her as only a female, as a female body, then every time I'm talking with her, I'm only thinking about her sexuality. And so how much policies are in place by governments that are trying to legislate for gender equality? How much have we put into trying to transform and change the way men think about women? And not just men, by the way. Women are also, because of age-long socialization, have also started to accept and see themselves as nothing better than that. So I think that maybe something that we can learn from all over the world, the question of seats, to push for that inclusivity, because a feminist foreign policy, like someone said earlier, implies inclusivity, participation. The challenges, the wicked problems of the world today cannot be solved by any one superpower. COVID has shown us that. So how are we going to include everyone, make everyone to be part of the discussion so that everyone gives a contribution, no matter how big or no matter how small, and we can all own the international system, own the problems, and also contribute to solving the problems. So I will leave that as food for thought in terms of what is feasible. But any questions from this section? Online. Right. So let's go to the online participants. I'm told that there are quite a number of you online. And the question is, I would like to ask Minister Fayon if she has any thoughts on how we can translate feminist-centered policies in rural areas that typically dominated by male traditional types of leadership. All right? Did you get the question? Good, right. And then there is a question from the back there, yes?
Hi there, and I think just to quickly, I'm going to try and ask it quickly. Regarding feminist foreign policy, how does it view gender difference? So is it a phenomenon characterized by biology? Is it a social construct? Is it both? And how do you approach that through the theory and through the policy? And then just quickly relating it to what Professor Sike said about how men think. If it is a cultural phenomenon, the way men think, how does foreign policy then address the cultures of another nation? Thank you.
Okay. Well, people are supercharged. There will be 1, 2. I'll only give you a chance if you promise to make one sentence. Right, okay.
Can I just these two? Because
these two, yes.
I will make it short. But
yes.
I'm forgetting.
Yes, okay.
So the last one is an interesting one because it's social phenomena. I wonder, are we born or being born defined that we girls prefer cooking, prefer wearing pink, or prefer driving cars or repairing cars, or the society defines us. So I would say it's a lot about education, patterns, awareness, and that comes also the question to how to do it in rural areas. Of course, it's a lot about policies and policy making, but it starts with, you know, really making awareness and education. Also in rural areas, it won't happen over the night, but these patterns and breaking taboos and introducing women in all spheres of lives go slowly. It has to go through policies and through awareness. And that is why I would say just be loud, speak about it, and not only women together, which is quite often the case. I know from our debates when we speak on women topics, we are mostly women together, and this is wrong. And I'm grateful that there are men that deal with the topic, because we need equally men on the topic. So, yeah, policies, awareness, leadership, and don't believe what I sometimes feel, that because we have quota, the women are less capable. Quota is not the reason that we are there just for filling the quota. We want to prove we are educated. We want to be there because we can do it. And that it's very important in the discussions. Unfortunately, we do have quota, but not for the purpose just that we hang there. We have to prove and really promote women and give them the chance, because, again, some statistics proves that women are even more educated, but having less chances to enter these spheres.
Thank you. That was a very smart answer, Deputy Prime Minister, because this same question put the British Prime Minister in trouble yesterday. So thank you for your answer. So we'll start with you, and then, yeah.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for everything you've shared. This is so informative. You're speaking to Khadi. Khadi Siabi. I am a recent honors graduate at the University of Pretoria, and my thesis was actually on identity politics. So just to align this conversation to that, it really sparked my interest in terms of the whole concept of identity politics, right? Because Francis Fukuyama describes a large part of identity comes from the psychological and inward realm of the human being, right? So, I mean, considering the LGBTQ community, if one believes that they identify as male and they identify as transgender or anything like that, it does, you know, somewhat affect, or it might have an impact depending on how people identify themselves. And just to quote, in terms of what you mentioned in terms of conflict resolution, you mentioned that the stats say that women naturally have good negotiating skills when it comes to conflict resolution, right? So my question is based on the whole concept of inclusivity in that regard. How do you plan on tackling the matters around identity politics whilst implementing the Feminist Foreign Policy, or rather have you considered the impact thereof of identity politics towards this? Thank you so much.
Did you get the question? I think she's trying to ask how you would, consider the question of identity politics, or what the impact will be on a feminist foreign policy. Is that a good summary? Right. Okay.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. My name is Thomas Probert from the Centre for Human Rights here. We've focused thus far in the discussion on multilateral and security dimensions of foreign policy. I just wondered if you could comment on the practice of feminist foreign policy in the development space. Obviously, your time in New York celebrating your appointment to the Security Council tends in that direction, but the heads of state and government meeting around the Sustainable Development Goals also prompts perhaps some thinking around the opportunities that the UN or Slovenia's development agenda may play for these themes.
I'll be brief. Thanks, Professor. My next question, I want to link his question at the top and your previous take on the issue of us being on the menu. My thinking is if Africans got onto the menu through colonialism and slavery, how has African leaders made efforts, strides, to take their citizens out of the menu onto the table? How do you, I don't, am I making sense, Your Excellency? Yes, because now he asked a question to say, how do we expect another foreign country to influence how leaders in another country treat their citizenry? You know, what I'm saying is, we are on the menu at a global stage as Africans. We were put there. What efforts have we made, and how can Her Excellency advise leaders in Africa to take their citizenry out of the menu? Have they made any efforts as African leaders?
Okay, thank you. And that's it. We're not going to take any more questions. I would want the Deputy Prime Minister to answer these questions and then close with a few remarks around Slovenian foreign policy and what your objectives will be, you know, going into the UN Security Council, your Security Council term.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. I'll first try with identity, if I got it right. Identity should not define us in a way, you know, that because either you are belonging to minority community, to LGBTIQ community, to the women in minority, it should not define us in a way that we are not equal in being on positions. So my ideal concept would be we are there because we can equally do it, not because of someone describes it that way or because identity pushes us that way. But another topic is, of course, the fundamental rights. And as you mentioned, LGBTIQ, I can just say proudly that in Slovenia we have same-sex marriages and very good rights for, I would always say this is fundamental right, and love cannot be forbidden as long as it doesn't threaten no one. But this is another topic. Still, it's important when you speak about fundamental rights. Maybe I wasn't really up to the point, maybe I didn't get your question properly, but you have difficult questions, I have to say. I'm not even sure African leaders and the security agenda and our priorities ahead. It's difficult to say or put on the same, you know, nominator African leaders as you cannot do on European leaders. It's about how in each country you struggle. For me, the main values, and what I tried to do with our foreign policies, to put our country in the core of values of democracy, solidarity, respect of rule of law and international law. So these, I think, are fundamentals that we can preserve peace and stability. And I think this is what will strive hard as a security member for the next 2 years in the Security Council, because this is at stake. And not only that, what we face, and in Slovenia we recently faced extreme weather conditions. We had 2 months ago floods worst ever in the history. The main word that echoed in the population was solidarity, because from the very first day we were not alone. All the neighboring countries, everyone came to help us, and this was solidarity. And you felt, I'm not alone, and this is also multilateralism. So this is what we will fight against extreme weather conditions. Women, peace, security, we have to do a lot. We have to fight for the rule of law and democracy and solidarity. Conflict prevention through water diplomacy. We have water in our constitution, the right to water. We have a know-how how to preserve water, and water can create conflicts if it's not managed well. So there are a lot of topics. Artificial intelligence. We just today had a fantastic conference I have here with me tomorrow, I'm meeting the foreign minister of your country, but we had a topic now, artificial intelligence, how to work South Africa, Slovenia together, also through the Security Council and with other African partners, because we have a center of artificial intelligence in Slovenia with fantastic researchers and Institute Jožef Stefan. So there are a lot of issues we can work together, and that will be our agenda also for the next 2 years. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Let's put our hands together for the Deputy Prime Minister. So before I bring this to a close, just to tell you that Africa needs to get itself on the table. No country is going to help Africa get itself on the table and out of the menu. Africa needs to rethink its state systems, rethink its governance systems, and begin to do the right things for itself. And then other countries will take it more seriously. So on that note, I would like to thank all of you for coming. Thank our keynote speaker, the Honorable Her Excellency, Deputy Prime Minister of the Republic of Slovenia. Thank you very much for coming, for your open and incisive engagements. We really appreciate this. We want to thank the representative of our interim Vice Chancellor for patiently sitting this out. Thank you very much for coming. And to you are the most important people for engaging with us, for coming, for attending. We do have some light lunch for those of us who would want to carry on conversations, try and answer some of the questions more. That will be taking place at the hub. For now, I think that I'm just going to ask that we do a group photograph with the entourage of the Deputy Prime Minister, and then we can all leave. Now, the procedure for leaving is that the Deputy Prime Minister and the Ambassador of Slovenia with our acting Vice Chancellor leaves, and then after the diplomatic community will leave, and the rest of us would follow. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for coming. Thank you.